Yes, let me introduce him to you. So Sayar Winter started teaching as an English language teacher during his medical college years. For his postgraduate studies in curriculum and instruction, he went to Portland State University in the United States with Fulbright scholarship. At University of Wisconsin in Madison, he did his doctoral research on language and literacy teaching and learning and its policy at US schools in relation to immigrant students from Myanmar. And Sayar Winter used to be a TKT trainer at the British Council in Myanmar around 10 years ago. Then he engaged in teacher education programs and activities of Myanmar TESOL, including its monthly workshops and annual conferences. In fact, Sayar Winter was really active, and he is still being very active with the in education projects and in ELT projects, and he has run lots of sessions, seminars, workshops regarding English language teaching. And he runs conversation classes, conversation club activities, not only the webinars and workshops. So without much ado, the floor is yours, Sayar. Okay, please, you can start anytime you like, Sayar.
Thank you very much, teacher, for introducing me and your appreciation. Thank you so much. And hello all, nice to meet you all. I'm Kyaw and this event really reminds me of our days in the past, you know, in Myanmar TESOLs in the beginning period. And we presented a lot of workshops, and then it was very good days. And okay, so today I would like to talk, instead of giving lectures or giving webinars, rather than in that terms, you know, I would like to think of or conceive of this event as more of discussion between me and you and all the participants. So I would like to share my experiences of learning and teaching through reading outside the classroom or inside the classroom as well, which, however, you, depending on, you know, you define what is extensive reading like. So first, I would like to share my screen for presentation. The plan I would like to go with along with you. So we'll think of, I will present my theme and topic in terms of 4 questions. So first part will be, what is reading like? And the second part will be, what do we do when we do extensive reading? So let's think of what is reading like, because we, as being a teacher, what I found out of my experiences, sometimes we forget, you know, what we think of what we are doing, because we always follow how to do and what to do and why we need to do, but sometimes we forget to remind ourselves very basic questions, you know, such as what is reading, before we are giving some tasks on reading, you know. So that is the first question I would like all of us to think of first, and then we'll go on to an adjective, extensive. What do we do when we do extensive reading as a teacher as well as a learner? And based on that experiences, in transition towards teaching, let's think of what is teaching like. So we'll think of teaching in terms of metaphor. So to think the concept of teaching out of the box, you know, in terms of using a metaphor. And then we'll come back to extensive reading. What do students learn when we use ER, extensive reading, in our teaching? So these are 4 key questions I'm thinking of for presentation and discussion with you all tonight. This is the framework. I think it will work. Let's see. So I'm really excited. You know, it's also my first time coming back to joining Myanmar TESOL again. So really all the memories come back, and I really enjoy it and really exciting. And so if I lose the thread of my talk, please bear with me. So let's think of what is reading like. And I would also like to test the new technology, which I have used before, that is using the whiteboard. So let's use whiteboard here. When we think of what is reading, I would like each of you to note down whatever you think of, or whatever you come up with, the words, to write down on the, as we did in our workshop, everybody comes up to the whiteboard around the classroom and write down what you think of, or brainstorm, So in that way, write down a word or phrase, which you can associate with reading. For example, for me, reading is like creating a code. Decoding will be my word for reading. So can you see the whiteboard? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes. So anybody can write down what do you think of reading is like. So you can go over to other slides also. There'll be 12 slides. So after that, we can take a gallery walk, all these slides. So I'll add 12 pages. You can write on any slide, any whiteboard you can access to. Yes, if you cannot use whiteboard, you can write down in the chat box. Reading is like a traveling. You can click on the pages, and when you click the pages, you will see the slide, second or third slide. You can write on second or third slide. Yes, second page, it will be okay. So after you wrote down your phrase or keyword, you can take a look at other keywords. Okay, so I'll give you 1 more minute. Okay, you can also go to the chat box and read others keywords. Okay. Mhm. So when you look at all these keywords, we can group them in terms of scales, purpose, and mechanistic or mechanism of reading, which is also like micro scales of reading, macro scales of reading, and purpose. And what else? So in the purpose, you will have pleasure to get knowledge. In the skills, you can have reading method like input and out, getting information, This is purpose, building up my thinking skills, improving thinking skills by reading, cognitive process, having a chat with partner, social skills. Okay. So I would like to give another definition of reading. Key for all topics. This is purpose. The multitask, you do all the mechanistic and multitask at the time of reading. Now we are doing also a reading using scanning and skimming. Okay, so I'm going to close off this one. Can you see the slides?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So another approach of what is reading, or what reading is like, is the keyword is making meaning of what we see and what we view, and cognitively or with whatever purpose you are reading, we try to make meaning of what we see. So what we see will be composed of texts. We read, for example, now scripts, English script, these texts, and web or print page script, and also we see different types of script modes. For example, when you read on the, for example, PowerPoint, we have different modes, different from web page. We see these. This is a title. This is subtopics. So we have been familiar with this kind of modes. This is bold type, sort of visual modes, audio modes. So being a teacher, you all are familiar with that. So we are making meaning of the text, which includes print, script, multi-modes, making meaning of these texts. In that making meaning of the text, we are not robots, okay? We are kind of a social person. So depending on our background, depending on our life story, for example, if you're a teacher, the same text will make a different meaning from the meaning made by a student. For example, we read this, for example, this is the text you would like your student to read, for example. So this text will make sense more to teachers, hopefully, than the students, because the words we see are very familiar with already. I also assume that being a teacher, you have already been knowing what is the reader, what is the student like. So I assume also that, okay? So who is reading a text also relates to what is the meaning of the text, okay? So in making meaning, in reading process, we make meaning. In making this meaning of the text, the meaning will be different or various or changing depending on the reader, particularly the reader's life story and background. Okay, so there is a text, there's a reader, and then there's a context. For example, I'm now talking to you and we are now communicating each other in online spaces, which is an immediate context or small context surrounding us, not in person. So in person context, the communication might be a little bit different, and the meaning conveying and meaning making might be a little bit different from online spaces. Okay. And another context is big context. The political situation, the social situation, economic situation, which might be depending on influencing us on the reader as well as the text writer and as well as the text users. So in reading, whatever we read, I think these three factors can be generally influencing us how we make meaning of the text we are reading. Okay. So what is the implication for teaching? We can go over teaching next in details, but the immediate implication is that when we want our students to read something, we need to think of the text. We need to think of the student who is going to read. But at the same time, we need to think of ourselves as a reader. Even though we are teacher, we are also going to read along with our students as a reader. So our life story might be different from life story of individual students as well as the group of students. Okay. At the same time, we will, as a teacher, we also need to think of the context we are doing reading together or individually. For example, how long the course will be, how long you're going to meet with your students, how long the course will take. These are some aspects of the context. And in what situation you are going to read together, or you're going to assign reading assignments, or having extensive reading along with your students. So these are first key points for reading. Do you have any question at this point? Please, if you have questions, burning questions, you can raise your voice. I can wait a few minutes. Okay. Go ahead. Not at the moment. Okay. Okay. So this is, we are thinking of only reading alone itself at this point. So let's move on to the next key question. What do we do when we do extensive reading? So think of yourself first, of an example or your experiences of doing an extensive reading. And can any one of you share your experience? You can raise your hand from reactions mode. Read a variety of texts and topics. Sometimes not serious, yes. Some interesting topics which is suitable with students level, okay. Not able to finish, yes. Not only for students, you yourself, you know, how did you read extensively?
Hello, Sayar.
Okay, ပြောပါခင်ဗျာ
မြန်မာလိုပဲဆွေးနွေးလို့ရလားရှင်
ဟုတ်ကဲ့မြန်မာလိုလည်းပြောလို့ရပါတယ်ဗျာ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါဟိုဟာလေကျမကအင်္ဂလိပ်စာတော့အဲ့လိုမျိုး extensive reading တော့ဥပမာမရှိဘူးပေါ့နော်မြန်မာစာမှာကျမငယ်ငယ်ကဘယ်လိုလုပ်ဘူးလဲဆိုတော့လေကျမတို့ငယ်ငယ်ဟိုကသင်ရတယ်လေချမောင်ရွက်တယ်မောင်မိုင်းဆိုပြီးတော့လေဟုတ်အဲ့ဒါမှာအခုဒီတက္ကသိုလ်ရောက်လာတဲ့ခါကျတော့ဒီချမောင်ရွက်တယ်မောင်မိုင်းဆိုတဲ့ဇက်ကိုဟိုကျမမြန်မာမေဂျာတော့မဟုတ်ပေမဲ့အဲ့ဒါကိုငယ်ငယ်ကနေစိတ်ဝင်စားတာပေါ့နော်ကျောင်းသင်ငယ်သားမှာပါကနေရလေအဲ့သူတို့ကကျမရွက်တယ်ဒီဆရာကြီးရဲ့စာအုပ်တွေကဘယ်လိုဖြစ်တယ်ဘာညာဆိုတော့သင်ခန်းစာတွေမှာတော့တအားညွှန်ထားပေမဲ့ ငယ်ငယ်ကကြတော့ဒီစာအုပ်တွေကို extensive reading အနေနဲ့မဖတ်ခဲ့ရဘူးပေါ့နော်အဲ့လိုဆိုတော့လေကြည့်လာတဲ့အခါမှာအဲ့လိုဆိုတော့တငယ်ချင်းတွေအဲ့မြန်မာမေဂျာသမားတွေစီကနေပြီးတော့ငှဖတ်တယ်ပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒီချမရတဲ့မောင်မိုင်းတို့ပြီးတော့မဟာဆန်ရင်သူပြဆက်တို့ဒီလိုမျိုးလေးတွေလေဟုတ်အဲ့လိုအခါမှာပို့ပြီးတော့ဘယ်လိုပြောမလဲ cast ထဲမှာပါတဲ့အကြောင်းအရာကိုလည်းပို့ပြီးတော့ကြည်ကြည်ပြန့်ပြန့်ပို့တည်သွားတယ်လို့လည်းခံစားရပြီးတော့ကိုယ်စိတ်အလိုပြည့်သွားတယ်ပေါ့နော်ကိုကဖတ်ချင်တာဒါပေမဲ့ငယ်တော့じゃဒီ resource တွေကမရဘူးလीเนาะဆိုတော့ဒီကလေးတွေကိုလည်းအင်္ဂလိပ်စာသင်တဲ့ခါမှာလည်းဒီလိုပဲ test ထဲကပါတဲ့အကြောင်းအရာအပြင်အဲ့ဒီဟာနဲ့ဆက်ဆက်တဲ့ဟာလေးတွေပေါ့ပေးဖတ်ရင်ကလေးတွေပို့ပြီးစိတ်ဝင်စားမယ်လို့ထင်ပါတယ်ဆရာဟုတ်
ဟုတ်ပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာ
ကဲပါ
ဟုတ်ပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာဒီကနေကျွန်တော်တို့ယူလို့ရတာကကျွန်တော်တို့ extensive reading ကအတန်းတွင်းနဲ့ဆက်ဆက်ပြီးတော့အပြင်မှာ so extensive reading is like connecting something happening inside the classroom with reading outside reading as the teacher already described the topics she had learned in class or the threads or the references had been extended towards the reading outside. So extensive reading is a kind of reading which we do mainly for pleasure, mainly not for the classroom purpose, but to our own satisfaction or to our own enjoyment, out of our curiosity itself, out of our interest itself, or maybe even out of our passion of reading on its own. So that is one definition of one assumption of one aspect of extensive reading. And as other teachers pointed out in the chat box, it is also a text to worldly features, worldly topics, which is related to real life experiences, real issues, and then trying to read more to various kinds of knowledge out of interest. And there's what else? Text to test, test to self. Yes. The teacher mentioned already about the Chimayote mind thing, text to text. You're trying to trace, connection between each text in terms of books as well as in terms of websites. When we say these days, text, we can also mention websites, YouTube's, different modes of text. So even if it is not printed text, we can also assume that we are also making meaning of what we read in different kinds of scripts and texts. Making connections, yes. Yes, thank you so much for your input, teachers. So let's go back to my slide. So the purpose, as you mentioned, is very extensive. Another thing is skills, as you mentioned, is reading skills, but because of that purpose, the skills will be also more synthesized. You are trying to match with what you have known already, read before. So micro and macro skills will also be practiced automatically on its own, in this reading extensively. Another thing is, I think extensive reading is understood mainly for teachers who are usually teaching inside online classroom as well. We can also think extensive reading in comparison with intensive reading inside classroom reading. For example, in our classroom, as a teacher, we always assign a particular reading text for one class or one session of class, or at most, 2 to 3 sections of class. Or sometimes we're in relation to, sometimes depending on the textbook we use, we use the text, short text, longer text. For intensive reading, we're trying to let our students practice all the skills at one sitting or at 2 or 3 sittings sometimes. But in extensive reading, and then we also do assessment of intensive reading. We, as a teacher, we can't feel okay or comfortable without any assessment or evaluation of the skills practiced and the way they learn from their intensive reading. Without assessment, we don't feel okay. But in extensive reading, we don't, as I understand, we don't usually rely on meticulous assessment or evaluation, except at 1 or 2 points of time, throughout that extensive reading program. So in relation to that, extensive reading is a long-term project for our students. We cannot finish it, in a few weeks or 1 or 2 sections. It should be a long-term project. At least, we should have more materials than we use inside our classroom. We should have more time, and we should also give more freedom and independent work for our students. So extensive reading could be conceptualized in contrast to intensive reading, which we usually use in our classroom. So that's the key. Another key is that how to relate with intensive reading and extensive reading, how to extend, extend means extend outside the classroom, as I already mentioned before. So up to this point, any questions? Yes, summarize.
I have a
Any
question, yeah.
question? Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Like when it comes to extensive reading, like Sia have mentioned a moment ago, we try to assess our students what they have got from the extensive reading as well. But from my point of view, like sometimes I am also a person that I don't like reading a lot, but I'm trying to read now. So like how can I say extensive the main purpose of the extensive reading is to get pleasure, but we let the student read the text, and at the same time like we are assessing them by giving some worksheets, or sometimes we let them do presentation about what they have read from the books. So I think somehow in their minds they might feel that, how can I say, they might not get the pleasure of the reading, and like instead they get the burden, like this is just a work for them. So I have that kind of feelings, yeah. So I like, I mean,
Yes.
how can I assess our students to have fun and at the same time to know that they really
Yes.
read their ones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the question, and key question. And to be honest, in my opinion, I don't want to assess their reading when I give assignment to them for extensive reading, because I don't want to discourage them not to enjoy it. I mean, I don't want to discourage them, and I don't want to give the meaning that, they are reading something for the sake of assessment. So I don't usually give evaluation. I don't really evaluate their reading whenever they do extensive reading assignment, or even assignment itself is not very good for extensive reading. So what I try to do before is that, trying to let them share in their own group, not in terms of assessing them, what they read or sort of that. Give them multiple choices. For example, you can read whatever books you want for a week, for example, and ask them to share, what they read, or about the story, or summary of the story, or summary of the chapter, or not every day assessing, asking them to share, not every day, just once a week, or every other week, like that. So not communication, evaluation, not in terms of a teacher assessing the student themselves, but more in terms of peer sharing. But in that case, the teacher need not evaluate or assess their skills very tightly. just to check, whether they are on the track of reading extensively. Maybe they might not share in details of what they are reading or what they have been reading. It's okay. It's also okay. They might, out of that sharing, they might go back to their books on their own with more interest, with more passion. So I think a teacher needs also to be very creative in evaluation, not evaluation as we do in our class. Does it answer your question, Teacher Caroline?
Thank you for your answers. Yeah. Yes, that was my question.
Yes. What some of the public schools in the US do is, they give the reading log to each student, and they ask the students to record, what they have been reading every day. But I don't really like that idea very much. Instead of everyday reading log, it might also be okay every week, and using more peer pressure is better rather than communication between the teacher and the student.
Yes, I'm also I
peer
agree
pressure.
that one too, sir. Like you, because I have been experienced for that, sir. At my school, so we have got the duties, and we're gonna give the extensive reading. But later on, they want the teacher to check back how much they absorb or how much they get it. So at the time, we related to their writing. So very first time or second time is still okay, sir. So that's true. Also, they really would like to do, but later on they feel bored for that, sir. So they would like to read about, to get to collect or like to get the information. They do not want to go for the writing part. So at that time, I have to change again, sir. Yeah, instead of writing, yeah. So we discuss about that. When we are discussing also, like just only like sharing, sir, what did you read, what did you get from that reading, do you like that read it or not? And if you are the writer, instead of writer, what kind of any would you like to change or something like this? At that time, the interesting book. yeah, instead of watching or like giving writing, is sometimes is they really boring for that, sir. And also I couldn't do like every week, or sometimes just only once per 2 weeks or something like this.
Yes.
I feel bored for that.
Yes, teacher. Yes, various activities will also help. And as other teachers mentioned in the chat box, reading club activities, and what I did after my high school graduation is, peer education. For example, our friends and I took turns, one text to explain to others. So for a presenter who is going to present a text with peers, he or she needs to know the background stories of that text and all the things, So with intensive task integrated with extensive reading, like peer education, peer teaching program, it can also help. It can also excite them or inspire them to read more text. Then they usually need to read, just 1 or 2 texts in the classroom. So reading club and peer teaching club, peer education class, they also help in using extensive reading. Okay, so let's move on to the next part. We have actually been touching upon this. What is teaching like? So now we are looking at extensive reading from another side. Now, of course, we have been already thinking of that, but let's challenge on thinking again. What is teaching like in terms of a metaphor? For example, I will say that the teaching is like a guide. So when I say teaching is like acting like a guide, what does a guide do? A guide is a person who shows or help other people reach somewhere and knows the terrain or map? How about a friend? A friend is someone who helps others, a good friend who helps others sometimes to not in terms of needs, in terms of help. So you can also think of a teaching in terms of a metaphor. What can you think of? Let's get help with whiteboard again. What is a metaphor for a teacher or teaching? Teaching is better, not a teacher, teaching. So can you write down your brainstorming facilitator? Yes. Mentor, lighthouse, yes. So there might be pitfall, there might be some challenging part of difficulties in teaching, in asking, in teaching as a teacher. So, and lighthouse is also a guide, synonymous to the guide, knows the terrain or map. Teacher is like a class clown, yes, yes. Without any joy or without any happiness and pleasure, we cannot learn anything to our best ability. So sometimes we are like a clown, yes. Teaching is like students' Pandora box. Teaching is learning, yes, yes. Instructor, performer, yes. Consultant, supporter. So at the same time, you can think of using these metaphors in, how can you apply these metaphors in using extensive reading? For example, like a lighthouse or like a guide. If we want to give, first thing is that, to give extensive reading assignment, or create programs, or if we want our students to read extensively, being a teacher, we also need to be an extensive reader. We need to practice to be a reader. Okay, so the best way of text type, which are very easy for us and for students to enjoy, are fictions or stories, since we grew up with stories, hearing stories, life stories, fictions, since our childhood. So these are the most familiar types of text in practicing, in nurturing ourselves and nurturing our students to have reading habit and to do extensive reading. So we need to be a reader, and the easiest way to start is to read fictions and to share fictional stories with each other. So in that way, we can be a lighthouse in terms of reading fiction. So another question is what language? So let's talk about that later. And sharing our joy, referring each other, which fiction is good, which novel is good or not good. Gardening, teaching is like gardening. Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Molding. Yes. So in extensive reading is more of, rather than we going back to that evaluation thing, rather than, communicating with the with an individual with an individual student alone, we would like our students, all of our students, to grow together, to share their enjoyment of reading together. So it's more of like gardening, okay, sharing experiences. Okay. So this is, okay, I will close the whiteboard. Let's move back to our slides. So we have been thinking of what is reading and what do we do when we do extensive reading, and then what is teaching like. So we have aspects of main components of extensive reading, using extensive reading in teaching. So next step is, I already touched upon this connection. As a guide, how we can ask our students do for extensive reading, how we can create our extensive reading program, extensive reading activities, as a friend, how we can learn together with you. As I said, as a guide, we need to have a certain, we need to be ourselves a reader. As a friend, we need to help our students, at every point of their journey of reading. And as a gardener, we need to let them share together. We need to have a collective growth of all of our students. Okay. So let's move on to the next point. So in that case, the last question is, where can we get resources for extensive reading? So the easiest resource we usually use is books. But in that case, are we going to use Myanmar books or any other ethnic language books or any other mother tongue books, or usually foreign language or L2 English books? So in my opinion, I think we need to use both, depending on their availability and depending on their enjoyment. I think mother tongue books are easy to let them have the habit of reading. And it's also easier to find print books if you want to use print books. And today we can also download some of the, or buy some of the print books online and read them in PDF forms. So how about L2 books? In L2 books, for the language level, we might not have as many books as possible we use, as we use Burmese books. So we can differentiate types of resources in terms of materiality, books, YouTube clips, or websites. And in terms of language, whether language L1 or L2 or both. So these are the questions when we use resources. So you might also question, why do we need to use YouTube clips? So the YouTube clips have transcripts, and you can also sometimes auto translate. For example, you can use Khan Academy clips for different topics. So these can also be resources for extensive reading. in different modes, in multiple modes, not only print text types. And websites such as DK Find Out. Do I need to show them? Please wait a minute. So DK Find Out. So you can ask them to browse and read DK Find Out for different topics. Short paragraphs in connection with other topics. So a little bit pre-intermediate level English, or intermediate or post-beginner level, or upper primary level. And you can download some of the free books. Oxford Readers. I think you can download from here. Oxford Reader language, Oxford language. So you can no. What are the titles? So you can browse, from such free websites, for some of the readers. This LibGen pre-level 1 here, TK Reader Snakes Letter pre-level 1, so you can get it. So the free, I think you might have already known this one, this website. I know these are not copyrighted, but for resources, I think for students it might be good. LIBG and LI. And DK Find Out is free website, DK FINDOUT. And you know that YouTube thing. Middle school biology, cells and organisms. And you can have auto translate from here. Auto translate. Dummies. Not very perfect translation, but can help us understand, can help your student understand a little bit. Translingual understanding. We can use both languages, in our teaching. Okay. So there are so many resources outside. And sometimes you can ask the internet or the reader read out the text on the screen, Okay, so these are some examples. Okay, and other types of these resources can also be differentiated and divided in terms of fictions, non-fictions, or you can use both fictions and non-fictions. For example, we read about in a fiction, we read about a historical period, let's say Civil War in the US, or for example, let's say Glass Palace Chronicle. Sorry, Glass Palace, Amita Ghosh, wrote about Gobang Dynasty thing or Burmese history. So, for example, when students read such a thing, historical novel, we can connect that historical novel with history or historical events of that time. So we can connect these two texts. So between texts we ask them to read, or between texts which these students read on their own, we can let them connect, we can help them connect with each other. For example, a student might say or share in their own group, hey, I read this and that novel. So you might point out that, oh, how about these other topics, you can find, or you can guide them to a website, which they can explore more on the background of that novel. Or when they are really passionate about a cell, you can also ask them to read about, point at, or relate them with science fiction. So intertextuality. Okay. So another type of differentiation of resources is theme-based or subject-based or discipline-based. So you can connect text in terms of theme. Let's talk about cell, or when you want to start with cell, as I said, cell science text, and then fictional text, science fiction. Subject-based, for example, when they're interested to read about poverty, for example. So you can talk about economic subject and so and so. And in higher educational level, in terms of discipline, social science articles can be connected with history articles, can also be connected with political science articles. So in that way, you can differentiate resources in terms of different ways. And depending on the way you differentiate these resources, you can create or relate them for the sake of learning. I've been nearly 1 hour already. I intended to talk only 20 minutes. So the key points is connect extensive reading with the themes in the textbook, connect with the life of the students. I think it's going back to the very first slide actually, text type and reader and context. And connect with other skills in sharing, connect with the students' context, connect with each resources. What else? For example, connect what they read in their own, what they read in books with what they read in the web, in the website. So I think one of the key words out of my experiences is connect. Am I right? C-T. Okay. Okay. So any questions? So if you have questions later, and if you want to share your thoughts, you can reach me through this email. This email is lifelong.
Hello, Sayar.
Okay, can I help you?
I would like to get the link of the where you find the downloaded downloadable, like a PDF file. Can you show me again the website?
LIB.
Like DK, like the Oxford Readers, there are many like series uploaded before. Which...
So I put that down in the chat box, libgen.li.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's all for what I want to share. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Not in terms of asking, but sharing your thoughts anyway, any other thoughts, ideas, queries. not only
Thanks, yeah.
questions.
I
for
have
student.
one question. Yeah.
Okay, Kamya, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is not really related to extensive reading. This is reading in general that we usually in the class. Yeah. When we teach reading for young learners like 8 to 12, should we limit times? Yeah.
So for the class reading or intensive reading, I think for the sake of teaching hours, we usually have time limitation. Am I right? But for the extensive reading, we don't usually have time limitation for them.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
we, at the same time, you know, we don't want them to read one book for their whole life. So not in that way. So we need to be very creative. So for example, we trying to help them plan aim of one thing. For example, your class or your school has every week there's a presentation section. And so that presentation section might push each student to read a book a month, for example, maybe. So an activity can inspire them to read. It's one of the connection with other activities for extensive reading. So you can connect, you can try to embed or in place extensive reading in every program of your teaching, in relation to every activity of your teaching. You can be creative, but not in terms of, you know, we read all the time, but trying to be more authentic, with more authentic purpose given by the textbook rather than purpose given by the textbook. Because I think in TKD and all the language teaching, you know, these are keywords of authentic purpose and, you know, lesson purpose sort of. So in terms of that, extensive reading can be conceptualized as with more authentic purpose for reading, try to help them have more authentic purpose for reading, rather than, you know, designed purpose of the textbooks or designed purpose of intensive reading. Does it answer?
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
If I may, I like to add something on this answer or the comment. Teacher Caroline has asked that if we need to give the time limit for the reading lessons when we teach the reading lessons in our class. And I think giving the time, setting the time is a good idea. So we can help them to be able to read a speech reading so that they can read fast and to get, sometimes for the gist, for the skimming, and sometimes for scanning or reading for details. So giving time, setting time is good. But of course, when we set the time, it should be kind of realistic. For example, if we ask the, let's say, grade year 2 student to read 2 pages, and then if we just give them 2 minutes, it is not altogether realistic or practical. So giving time is, in my opinion, is good. But for the extensive reading, we don't usually give the time limit. But it is, if it is a class procedure or a school program, I think giving time is also kind of motivating. For example, how many books can you read within a week? So kind of, motivating, and it is kind of, competitive, but, children especially, they want to do things better than other people. So I think it's a good idea. But we need to be very careful not to get them too competitive and too aggressive, but in a very healthy manner. I think I'm just adding my thoughts to your questions, teacher.
Yes, teacher. Thank you, teacher May.
So what about others? Okay, we have got good ideas here, great ideas in the chat. Would you like to share your comments, or would you like to raise any questions to Sayar? Yes. Yes, teacher. You want to add more? And if you have got, if you are using, the extensive reading programs in your school, and if you have got good, okay, if you know good resources, for example, the web links, you can also share it in the chat. It's good for us. We can also, log onto them and share with our students as well, and with other teachers. Yes. 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 If you have no more questions or no more comments, yes, teacher Dazin. Yes, okay, she has given us the link for the e-certificates. So okay, you can sign up there. You can fill in the form, and okay, I will send you the certificates very soon in the next week. Yes, I think we have no more questions, because your talk is perfect, and nothing to add and nothing to questions your talk, your presentation. If you have no more to say, I think we can close the activity. But okay, let me say some words of thanks to you, Sayar. Thank you very much for today's webinar. It's really useful for us. And reading, we always take it for granted that, okay, reading, when we teach reading, students will be able to follow the lessons in the class, and they'll be able to read on their own. But in fact, extensive reading plays a very important role in developing the reading skills. In my personal experience, the more people read, the better knowledgeable they get, and the better skillful they get in other aspects as well, because reading is directly linked with writing. So the good writers in class, at least, okay, are the good readers. So reading is a very important skill for us, for all the teachers, especially in language learning. And your session is also thought-provoking, and you have given us quite a lot of tasks to voice our thoughts, and thank you very much to give our own comments. And it's really useful, not only for us, not only for students, but also for the students. And thank you also very much for the links, like DK Find Out, and other very useful links where we can find the reading resources. Yeah. Thank you very much, yeah. So if possible, we would like to invite you again, yeah. And we would like to hear more from you, yeah. And it's a very good webinar today, because I can see, that the responses in the chat box is a good crowd. We had 102 people today, and everyone, I think, okay, was contributing to this webinar. They wrote up on the on the whiteboard and in the chat box, all very good ideas. So it's I'm sure that this is a very good opportunity for all of us for the professional development. So thank you so very much on behalf of all the teachers present here and from MNT Seoul, and the teachers who are present here, the participants. We also like to say thank you to you, because without you, we cannot do these things. And thank you for your support and your willingness to move on to do the professional development. Thank you so much. And I also like to extend my thanks to Streamline Teaching, Training and Learning Center for hosting us, the Zoom event, Zoom account for all the events. Every time we have these kind of webinar sessions for teachers. Yes. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, teacher. Also, teacher, will teach me teacher me.
ဆရာလည်းတကယ်တင်ပါတယ်ဆရာတကယ်လည်းဒီနေ့ကဆိုရှင်ကျမတို့တကယ်လည်းဝင်ပြောရတယ် one sided မဟုတ်နေဘူး it's it's two-way communication and it's participatory, and we all had chances to participate. We just put in our own thoughts and exercises, and it's very good, yeah. So it's very realistic, and it gives us some food for thought as well, yeah. Thank you so very much. Yeah. Okay. Teacher,
teacher နေကောင်းတယ်နော်
Okay.
ကျွန်တော်တရားဆရာတွေလည်းအများကြီးဖြတ်တွေ့နေရတယ်ဟုတ်ကဲ့
ဆရာဒီမှာတော်တော်များများဆရာကိုတည်ပြီးသားပါဆရာနဲ့တွေ့ပြီးသားတွေတည်ပြီးသားတွေပါဆရာအထူးသဖြင့်ကျမတို့လူကြီးတွေပေါ့နော်လူကြီးတွေဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဆရာနဲ့တည်ထားတာပေါ့နော်လူငယ်တွေဆိုလို့ရှိရင်တော့ဆရာတပည့်တွေပါလည်းဖြစ်ကုန်မယ်ဆရာ workshop တွေလည်းတက်ဖူးတယ်လို့ပြောတယ်လောလောဆယ်မှာတော့ဒါနည်းနည်းလေးကျမကဆရာနဲ့အလှမ်းလေးနည်းနည်းလေးဝေးနေတာပေါ့ဒါ physically ပါဆရာဒါပေမဲ့လည်း it's just only a click away ပါဆရာ virtually we can always be together ဆိုဆရာရဲ့နောက်ထပ်လည်းဖိတ်ပါတယ်ကျမတို့တကယ် useful ဖြစ်ပါတယ်ဆရာတကယ် useful ဖြစ်ပါတယ်တန်းနေပါOkay, reading ကတော့လုပ်တယ်ဒါပေမဲ့ reading ကအတန်းထဲမှာလုပ်ပြီးရင်ပြီးရောလို့ပဲထင်လိုက်တာပါအတန်းထဲမှာသင်လိုက်ရင်ဒါကျောင်းသားဖတ်တတ်သွားမယ်တကယ်ကတော့ extensive reading လုပ်ပြီးမှလုပ်ဖို့တိုက်တွန်းနိုင်မှအားပေးနိုင်မှတကယ်လည်းဖြစ်မှာပါဆရာ That's really great ဆရာOkay ပါOkay ဆရာတကယ်လို့ပြောဆရာမရှိအမတို့ဘက်ကလည်းတက်ရောက်လာတဲ့ဆရာမတွေဘက်ကလည်းပြောဆရာမရှိလို့ရှိရင်ဆရာ if you want you can leave or you can have a chat with the teachers here ဒီတိုင်းမှာ casual chat လည်းပြောလို့ရတယ်ဒီစာအကြောင်းလုပ်လို့ရတယ်ငယ်လို့ဆရာကိစ္စရှိရင်လည်းဆရာ you can leave ကျမတို့ကတော့ဒီမှာဘာခေါ်လဲခုနကတော့ certificate form လေးတွေဖြည့်တာကျမတို့စောင့်ပေးပါမယ်တချို့ကline မကောင်းတော့ချက်ချင်းမဖြည့်နိုင်တော့ကျမတို့ကနည်းနည်းလူဆောင်အောင်စောင့်ပြီးတော့မှလူဆောင်လောက်မှကျမတို့တော့ we end the meeting ဆရာ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ကျွန်တော်ခဏနေပြီးထွက်ပါမယ်ချင်းမင်းငယ်
ဟုတ်ပါတယ်မင်းငယ်လည်းရှိရယ်ဟုတ်တယ်တီချက်တော့ခိုင်တင်ခုနကတော့ရှိရယ်
ဟုတ်ကဲ့တွေ့လိုက်တယ်တီချက်
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆရာနဲ့
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆရာတောင်းတယ်ဆရာမတွေ့တာကြာ long time no see
ဟုတ်ကဲ့နေကောင်းပါလေဗျာဟုတ်
ဆရာကလေးတော့ပြီးပြီလားကြီးလေး
ကြီးလေးစက်ခွန်ရောက်ပြီပေါ့စက်ခွန်
ကျော်စက်ခွန်တော့သွားပြီလားဟုတ်ဆရာဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါဆရာမျိုးသမီးလည်းနေကောင်းတယ်
ဟုတ်ကဲ့
လေးဆယ်
ဟုတ်
ကဲ့ပါတတိယနေပါဆရာတွေ့ပြတာတော်တော်ကြာပါပြီ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့
ဗျာဟုတ်
တယ်ဆရာ
Hello
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆရာ
Hello ဆရာ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆရာ
ဘာစောလူထောမှာ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါဆရာ
ကျွန်တော်မတွေ့ဘူးအမ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆရာကျွန်တော်တို့တခုလေးဆွေးနွေးကြပါရဆရာကျွန်တော် extensive reading ကိုတအားကိုအားနေလိုက်ကြတာပေါ့နော်ဒီ food for thought ရပါတယ်
ဟုတ်
တော့ဆရာပြောသလိုကျွေးကူးရေပါမလုပ်ပေးနိုင်ခဲ့ကြဘူးဆရာ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဟုတ်ကျွန်တော်မှနည်းနည်းမှောင်နေတော့မတွေ့ရဘူးအခုတွေ့ရပြီတကယ်မှပြောလိုက်တော့ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါ
တွေ့ရဝမ်းသာပါတယ်ဆရာဒီချက်မေ
ကျေးဇူးပါဒီချက်ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဒီလိုပွဲလေးတွေလေဒီလိုမိတ်ဆွေတွေနဲ့ပြန်ဆောင်လာကျွန်မတအားဝမ်းသာတာပဲအပြင်မှာလည်းမတွေ့ဖြစ်ကြဘူးလေဒီနေမျိုးနဲ့ဆိုအခုလိုမျိုးလေးပြန်တွေ့ရတယ်နောက်ပြီးအထူးသဖြင့်ဒီလို professional development အတွက်ဆွေးနွေးရဆိုတာတအားကောင်းတာပဲကျွန်မတအားဝမ်းသာပါတယ်ဆရာမအကုန်လုံးဝမ်းသာပါတယ်
ဟုတ်
နောက်ထပ်ချိန်တွေကိုလည်းမျှော်လင့်ပါတယ်ဆရာ
Okay.
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါဗျာဟုတ်ကဲ့ကျွန်တော်စနေတနင်္ဂနွေတော့အားလုပ်လို့ရပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာဟုတ်
Okay ပါဆရာရေဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆရာအနည်းဆုံးဆရာရေနောက်တစ်လားလောက်ပေါ့ချက်ချင်းတော့ဆရာတော့မလုပ်ပါဘူးတစ်လားလောက်ဖြစ်ပေါ့အဲ့လိုတစ်လားတစ်ခါလောက်ဖြစ်ပေါ့ဆရာအားတဲ့အချိန်မှာပါဆရာရေအဲ့လိုခေါင်းစဉ်လေးဒါဆို real ဟိုလည်းဖြစ်ပါတယ် relevant လည်းဖြစ်တယ်ဆရာရေနောက်တကယ်လည်း practical လည်းဖြစ်တယ်တကယ်လည်းပြန်သုံးလို့ရတဲ့ဟာမျိုးဆိုတော့ကျွန်မတို့အတွက်လည်းသုံးနေတယ်အဲ့အမျိုးလေးဆရာဒီပါလို့
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါဗျာဟုတ်ကဲ့ပါဟုတ်ကျွန်တော် suggest လုပ် topic လေး suggest လုပ်တယ်တစ်ချက်စီကနေဒီချက်မေးကိုပို့ထားပြီးတော့
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဆရာဟုတ်ကဲ့
ကျွန်တော်လည်းဘာလို့မှမသိဘူးပေါ့နော် topic ကအဲ့လိုဆိုတော့
ဟိုဟာဆရာ area ထဲမှာဖြစ်မယ်ဒီနေ့ဒီ native speaker non native speaker ပေါ့နော်ဒီnative speakerism ပေါ့နော် native speakerism ကျမတို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဆရာကျမဆိုလို့ရှိရင် I have this inferiority complex အများရန်ရှိငါ native speaker မဟုတ်ဘူးဆိုပြီးတော့အများရန်ပဲဟိုတိုင်ငယ်စိတ်ကဝင်မိရဆရာရဲ့အဲ့တော့တကယ်ကတော့ဒါဟိုဟာပေါ့နော်ဒီကျမတို့မြန်မာလူမျိုးတွေအနေနဲ့မြန်မာဆရာမိုက်မှာအဲ့လိုဖြစ်နိုင်တာပေါ့အဲ့ခါကြလို့ရှိရင်ကျမတို့ရဲ့အားသာချက်ဒီကျမတို့ဘာတွေလုပ်လို့ရတယ်လဲဒါမျိုးဆိုဆရာအနေနဲ့ဒီ social perspective ကနေ social linguistic perspective ဆရာဆိုရင်ပြောပြပြီးလို့ရမယ်ဒီနော်ဆရာဒါမျိုးရေးလည်းကောင်းပါ
ဟုတ်ကဲ့အဲ့ဒါကြတော့တစ်ချက်ဟိုပါပေါ့ရတယ်တစ်ချက်ရတယ်
ဟုတ်ကဲ့အဲ့ကျမ